After getting bitten by the tiny house bug and building some tiny houses, we started seeing that converted school buses or skoolies were getting very popular. Kind of like with the tiny house, I said, I gotta have one, I gotta do one. Found one close by, the kind of bus that you could trust, that had a good drivetrain and those kind of things. So we bought it unbeknownst to my wife, brought it home before I told her I was getting it because it sounds like a crazy thing to do. Didn't really know what I wanted to do with it because I'd never worked on a school bus before, other than I wanted to convert it into a living space that you could drive around, which a tiny house, you can't drive it around unless you have a vehicle to pull it. So for about 6 months, we didn't do anything to it but take the seats out. And I would just go sit in my truck and just look at it, trying to get a vision. We came up with the idea to do something along the lines of a tiny house and use the bus frame as our platform for the build, as opposed to a trailer that you build a tiny house on, which means the tiny house is now drivable and you don't have to worry about having a vehicle to tow it. And I knew that the roof was going to be too low. When we decided to cut the roof off in order to raise it, we didn't want to cut all of the roof off. We wanted it to maintain its appearance from the front and from the rear that this was a school bus. If someone's at a traffic light, I want them to say, wow, that's a school bus. I had somebody describe it to me at one of the tiny house festivals, said it looks like you drove a school bus through a house and then stopped. So they knew it was a school bus, but it's also a house, so a lot of people really don't know what to call it, which was kind of our goal. Residential construction, of course, you don't have to worry about the house itself moving down the road like you do with a school bus or a tiny house. So you have to think through things a little bit differently. Where the wind's going to be pushing, where rain is going to travel when you're driving 60 miles an hour. When we put this bus together, we had to think a lot about how we were going to connect a wood structure to a metal structure and it be as strong as it was originally, and also the weight involved. On the interior, some of the things that we did to make it have the feel of an actual house versus the feel of a school bus. Rather than using drywall for the interior walls, which we wanted that look because that would look the most like a finished home was to have drywall, we used birch plywood and painted it. So when people come in, they say, wow, how did you get drywall to stay in this moving bus? I was like, well, that's the thing, it's not drywall. And that's the greatest compliment that you could give, is to think that it was. So we achieved our goal. One of the things that we did was we wanted to be able to move some air around inside the bus, to move cool air from one room to another. And there is a such thing as what's called a transfer fan. Well, they're all way too big to fit in a tiny house, so we use computer cooling fans to do the same job but on a smaller scale. We've been to a couple of tiny house shows and took a bus down there really just to show people what we could do. We knew it was a little different. I'd seen maybe one or two other buses that were somewhat similar, but they weren't drivable. They were parked in place, and so we borrowed some ideas from some other people. We're not the first ones to do this to a bus, to build a house on the back of a bus, but maybe we did a few things unique that had not been done before. Well, there are a lot of talented people out there doing tiny homes and school buses and Airstreams. I look at a lot of things other people are doing to gain inspiration, and I hope they're doing the same with us. We like to share ideas. I get people that call me all the time. They find us on social media and say, how did you do so-and-so? And we share ideas. So it's a great community. When we designed our schoolie, our inspiration was Cape Cod Beach House. So that's where the cedar shingles came from and some of the detailed trim work on the inside. So today we've got a new client coming to pick up a school bus. About 30 minutes before they're due to arrive, we're still working on the bus. We still got things we just can't let go of. We can't get our hands off of it. There's always things we think, you know what, why don't we change that real quick? So we were changing some rusty bolts out that we thought ought to look new. So we run to the hardware store and changing bolts out and touching up paint, doing all those kind of things. And that's just kind of our philosophy of building. It's never perfect, but we're going to try our best to make it that way before it leaves. I always have people ask me how I feel when something that we've built is turned over to the owner or to the new customer, and it either is driven away or pulled away or they move into the new house. How does that make me feel? We have a real feeling of pride when the customer is happy, and they say, well, you don't feel sad that you're not getting to work on it anymore? And I remember a quote that Frank Lloyd Wright, the famous architect, they asked him, what was your favorite project you've ever done? And he said, the next one. And that's kind of how I feel, that I'm always looking for the next one. And for most of the time, I can't start the next one until the last one moves out. So we're super excited and prideful that the last project we have is going to a new home, but we're also just as excited that we're going to have a new one coming up that's going to create a whole new bunch of challenges for us to address.